Okay, so let's get into the challenge you brought us today. We're diving into a really deep structural question.
A big one.
Yeah. What if? What if true responsibility and ethics aren't really about following a set of steps,
Yeah.
a checklist, but instead it's about sensing a kind of relational coherence?
Right. And what if the most ethical thing you can do in any given moment isn't written in a handbook?
Exactly. What if it's something you feel? The source you sent over had that amazing phrase, "in the subtle tightening of a room."
That phrase is everything. That shift in orientation is the core idea we're exploring today. And it comes from some incredible work you shared by Jaime Hoerricks.
And the main focus is on this concept of Gestalt processing.
Right. So just to frame this for Gestalt processing is, well, the simple way to think about it is seeing the whole painting instantly. You perceive the complete picture, the pattern, the whole context.
Before you've even analyzed a single brushstroke.
Precisely, before you've broken it down into its component parts.
And the big move Hoerricks makes here is to say this isn't just a cognitive trait, like how your brain files information.
No, not at all.
It's a complete ethical orientation, a way of being in the world that senses morality in a way that's fundamentally different from how our institutions see it.
That's the pivot. And the author's really clear that they're moving past the argument of if Gestalt processing is, a real thing.
Right. They say that case has already been made.
That case has been made, exactly. So our mission for this deep dive is to really understand the implications. What happens to our whole idea of accountability, of responsibility, when we take this ethics at the level of the field seriously?
And to really feel the weight of that question, I think we first have to establish the baseline, the system we're all swimming in.
The default setting.
Yeah, the overwhelmingly dominant model of ethics in, the Western world.
Which is the procedural baseline. So an analytic moral frameworks, and this is what governs our legal systems, our HR departments, academia, you name it.
So basically everything.
Basically everything. In that world, ethics is inherently linear. It's procedural. It looks at a situation like a math problem to be solved.
And it's designed to provide certainty, right?
You're right.
We rely on it for a reason. When something goes wrong, the procedural framework asks, 3 basic questions?
Yeah, and they're always retrospective, looking back.
Right. What was your intent? Did you follow the documented steps? And crucially, can you justify your actions linearly after the fact?
That's it. That's the whole game. It's comforting because it's predictable. It minimizes risk by defining accountability through these, objective, verifiable steps.
But the key thing you pointed out is its timing. Ethics in this procedural frame is something you apply.
After language has stabilized the situation, that's the critical part. Once we can all agree on what happened, who the actors were, what the facts are, then we can pull out the rule book.
So it's always playing catch-up.
Always. It's applying a stable lens to something that's already finished.
Okay, but this is exactly where the Gestalt orientation just completely breaks the chain. The author says, very explicitly, that their ethical sense does not begin at that point.
Not even close. It begins much, much earlier. It fundamentally shifts the entire locus of moral authority away from the rule book and into the relational space.
Back to the field.
It begins at the level of the field. This is ethics that's rooted in felt coherence. It's sensing the moral reality before anyone's even written up an incident report.
That example from the source is just so vivid, it really sticks with you. The ethical sense starts in the subtle tightening of a room.
Yes.
You don't need someone to formally declare that there's a conflict or that harm is occurring. The moral problem is already present. It's in the atmosphere itself.
It's a tacit understanding that something in the system has gone wrong. So if you're someone who primarily perceives the world this way, through this Gestalt lens, you're already responding to that subtle tightening.
Long before a checklist ever comes into play.
Long before. And this is why Hoerricks calls it a quieter and more dangerous orientation. Quieter because it's intuitive, it's about attunement. Dangerous because, it challenges the absolute authority of the written code.
Okay, let's dig into that dangerous part. Because if we take this orientation seriously, it completely redefines moral action. The author lays out 4 really radical ethical characteristics. The first one is maybe the biggest challenge to the procedural world.
Which is sensing harm before language?
Before language. So you're sensing danger or moral wrongness before the situation can even be verbally articulated.
Or named or proven. Think of it like an early warning radar system for relational ethics. The procedural world is still trying to get a lock on the target's coordinates, but the Gestalt mind has already seen the whole pattern and is, maneuvering to avoid a collision.
I get that. But I think the biggest question, the greatest vulnerability, is that felt coherence sounds so subjective. How does this framework protect against someone just, claiming moral urgency because they're anxious? It feels dangerously close to replacing ethics with just vibes.
That is a crucial question. And Hoerricks really addresses this by emphasizing its attunement to relational dissonance, not just personal feeling.
Okay.
So the Gestalt orientation isn't just sensing, I feel worried. It's sensing a lack of coherence, a sudden tightening across the entire field, the shared space between people.
So it's an ecological read, not a personal one.
Exactly. The sensor is calibrated to system-level shifts, which gives it a kind of objectivity, at least within that specific relational system.
That makes more sense. It moves from I feel bad to the system we share is misaligned, which that brings us to the second characteristic, which totally redefines how we interact.
It really does.
It's treating consent not as a single checkbox, a yes or no, but as a state of ongoing coherence.
And that is such a profound challenge to our current static models of consent. Procedural consent is a snapshot in time. You sign the form, you say yes, and that consent is just assumed to hold until it's formally revoked.
Right.
Gestalt consent demands a continuous reading of the situation. The moment that relational coherence, that felt alignment shifts or tightenings, the moral system is already flashing red, regardless of what any signed document says.
So if a conversation starts off feeling fine, totally coherent, but then halfway through the energy shifts, the body language tightens, a subtle discomfort emerges.
Right.
A Gestalt ethical framework would say the moral obligation is to respond to that loss of coherence immediately.
Immediately. You don't wait for a formal stop. And that need for constant responsiveness leads right to the third point. This orientation locates moral authority in bodies, not in procedures.
The attuned body becomes the primary sensor.
The censor and the arbiter of what's right and wrong in that moment, it's not some external codified rule book you have to consult.
It's basically treating the body as this incredibly sophisticated instrument, capable of registering these subtle disturbances in the field. It's the ultimate argument against a purely rationalist ethics. It says the body's experience is an essential part of moral judgment.
And if you put all those pieces together, the pre-language harm sensing, the ongoing coherence, the embodied authority, you get to the fourth and I think most defiant characteristic.
Which is?
The Gestalt ethical system is a defiant refusal of scripted care.
Defiant refusal of scripted care.
Wow.
That phrase just perfectly captures the clash with institutional norms.
It really does.
I mean, just think about dealing with a scripted customer service line. If you're operating from a place of sensing coherence, of moment-to-moment attunement, a script isn't just unhelpful.
It's actively harmful. It prevents ethical responsiveness. The script requires the person on the other end to completely ignore the field.
It forces both people into this rigid, predetermined sequence. It treats them like interchangeable parts.
Exactly. Whereas true ethical care requires the ability to deviate, to attune, to prioritize the unique relational moment over the prescribed steps. The script demands compliance. Gestalt ethics demands genuine presence.
And this conflict, this sort of necessity of defying the script for the sake of real care, that leads us right into the institutional tension the author talks about. When this intuitive orientation meets a structured system, the result can be brutal.
Oh, absolutely. The author mentions that their natural way of knowing, of acting ethically, was often flattened into a deficit.
Not just ignored, but pathologized.
Yes. Pathologized by systems that labeled it too intuitive, too relational, too early, too difficult to explain.
That feels instantly recognizable. Anyone who's been in a high-stress corporate or academic job has seen that. You flag a problem based on tacit knowledge, a gut feeling, but because you don't have the hard, linear data yet.
You're ignored, or you're labeled as being overly sensitive or an alarmist.
And then you get that awful I told you so moment, except you're the one who paid the price for being right too early.
It's a structural trap. The institutions demanded scripts where only genuine sensing could actually provide real care. They demanded declarations, those static checkboxes, where continuous attunement was what was actually needed for safety.
They demanded strict compliance with the written rule.
Where genuine present care was already happening, it's a total mismatch of timing and modality, and it puts the Gestalt-oriented person in an impossible position.
And the consequence is, it's severe.
Yeah.
The source highlights this specific punishment, that people living in this system were punished not for doing harm, but for responding to it before it could be properly named.
Just let that sink in.
Yeah. I mean, let's just sit with that. They acted ethically, they saw the pattern, they anticipated the shift in the field. They, slammed on the brakes because they sensed ice on the road ahead.
Hmm.
But because they break some minor traffic rule to prevent an accident that hadn't happened yet, an unnamed accident, they were penalized by the system.
A system that prioritizes the rule over the outcome. They were too early, and therefore, according to the official timeline, they were wrong.
It just reveals this profound systemic failure to recognize the legitimacy of, what'd you call it? Anticipatory morality.
I think that's a perfect way to put it. And Hoerricks makes it clear, this isn't some abstract theoretical problem. This ethical system already exists. It operates every single day, often under suspicion.
And crucially, the author identifies the specific groups who often have to live inside this heightened anticipatory ethical reality.
Yes, many autistic, queer, traumatized, and marginalized people. Populations who, for reasons of survival, whether from systemic oppression or personal history, often have to rely on this kind of rapid, whole system reading.
They've become experts in reading the field.
They are experts, and yet their entire ethical system, which is fundamentally about care and coherence and deep relational responsibility, is routinely dismissed by the dominant procedural culture.
A culture that values linear justification above everything else.
Above all else. So understanding this as a valid ethical orientation, not just a personality trait, is so important. It legitimizes their unique form of moral authority.
So as we start to wrap up this deep dive, it feels really important to reiterate what this concept is not.
Yes, that's vital.
It's not an argument to just replace ethics with subjective vibes. It's not trying to dismiss the importance of formal consent or excuse harm by just saying, my intuition told me so.
Not at all. I think the core takeaway for you is that this deep dive was about describing a functioning, applied ethical system that already exists in the world. It just operates on a different clock and prioritizes different things.
It's centered on sensing and relational coherence.
And attunement. Rather than relying only on linear justification and external rules, it shifts the fundamental question from were the steps followed to, is the field in coherence?
And if we really take responsibility seriously at that level, at the level of the field, it asks so much more of us. It asks us to be constantly present and accountable to the relational atmosphere, not just to a written contract.
It demands a much higher level of presence than just checking off boxes.
So if ethical action truly begins in that subtle tightening of a room, here's something to think about as you go through your day.
Consider what procedures, what scripted interactions you rely on at work, in your relationships, even just in public spaces. Are any of them masking a deeper need for true, ongoing attunement? And how would taking responsibility for the level of the field in your own life change how you think about accountability?
It's a challenge to trust that sensation, even before the words arrive to justify the action.